This is Chasing the Cutoff with Troy Ide. Conversations with professional people age 40 and older who balance busy careers with excellence in endurance athletics and extreme sports. From Denver, Colorado, here's Troy Ide.
This is Chasing the Cutoff. I'm Troy Ide, and I'm here with Cory Wroblewski. How are you, Cory?
Just fine. Thanks, Troy.
I'm so happy to have you here, and we're going to talk about your remarkable career, which has taken you from running to tours of duty, including in Iraq and Afghanistan as a helicopter pilot in some very challenging situations, which I'm sure you'll talk about, to being a sub 3-hour marathoner in your 40s, which is awesome. And talk about that journey and how you were able to keep training and keep getting better and better, and also your amazing legal career, which has spanned lots of different disciplines, including in-house counsel and extraordinary international law firms and so on. So welcome.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate you having me.
So you're from Nebraska. This is so exciting. We have a Nebraska following in this podcast, including the Omaha Running Club. So shout out to all the Omaha Running Club members.
Yes, that's incredible.
So tell us about you. Where did you grow up in Nebraska?
I grew up in Kearney. It's in central Nebraska. My earliest memories of running are from elementary school, running the 1 mile around our school. And I did a little bit of running in middle school with our 15-day track program. But my running journey, my earliest real memories are from high school.
And you were on a crack team in Nebraska. I've heard about this team. What was the high school called?
Kearney High School.
Kearney High School.
Yes.
It's a good name for a high school in
Simple.
Kearney, Nebraska.
Yes, exactly.
What was your mascot?
The Bearcat.
The Bearcat. What is a Bearcat?
No one really knows. There are other schools. I think Cincinnati has a Bearcat. But don't ask me to find it. I couldn't even tell you what it looks like. It's a small bear. We have Googled it before. Yeah.
And so you were on what do they? Is it 5 year? What do they have in Nebraska for high schools? How do they?
Sure. It was Class A through D or E, I believe. We were I want to say when I was in high school, we were the third smallest Class A school of probably about 35 schools.
Wow.
And I think I mentioned that we went on a good run. I think 11 or 12 years in a row of consecutive state champions.
Incredible.
And then over the next 10 years, I think we won 5 of those 10. So a very, very long run. Most years it wasn't even close. I generally just credit to our coaches. They were all brilliant. And when we were there, when me and my friends were on the team, most of the coaches had been there for a decade or two. Very experienced coaches in both track and cross country. So I got real lucky and had a very strong foundation for running. Coaches taught us how to run the right way, how to run smart, and generally they made it enjoyable.
When did you graduate? What year?
2002.
So you were running cross country and track?
Yes. Yeah. Cross country in Nebraska. I think many states are like this. It is in the fall, and then track is in the spring.
And what'd you do in track? What was your event or events?
The mile and 2 mile. And I dabbled in the 800, but generally, the mile and 2 mile.
Awesome. So from there, you catapulted to West Point.
Yes.
How did you get into West Point?
Well, I studied hard, but that's not why I got in. It wasn't even really on my radar, the academy, until the track coach reached out. His name was Jerry Quiller, absolute legend in the sport.
Yes.
He coached at CU for a decade or so, and then maybe another 15 years at the military academy. Fantastic guy, great coach, great mentor. And he reached out, and I missed his call once or twice. I had just assumed I'd run somewhere in the Big 12, as a lot of my college teammates were planning to do and had done previously. But Coach Quiller finally got a hold of me, and I remember sitting down in my room with a landline, as we did back then, and I think we talked for about 2 hours. And by the time I was off that call, I had a school visit planned right after 9/11 was the school visit. And, I think once I went out there's no question that's where I wanted to go to school and run.
Now, what was your impression when you first saw West Point, when you first saw the campus and your maybe on the river, and it's quite a sight. It's quite a sight.
It's beautiful. It sounds like you've been there.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. One of my regrets is not enjoying it more when I was there. The fall colors and just absolutely how beautiful it was. I think I captured that when I was visiting, but it's also a little unnerving thinking and seeing like this is a big commitment. This is 4 years of a challenging institution, and then followed by another 5 to 8 years of military service. A big decision to make as a 17, 18-year-old kid. But I think once I saw it, I never really had a question that I was going to pursue that line of work.
So are you from a military family originally?
My dad served a little bit at the tail end of Vietnam, just a couple of years. And to his credit, he did not push me towards West Point or the military. But when I told him that, I made the decision by myself, I told my parents I made the decision by myself, he was just elated and so happy. And I thought, why didn't you tell me that? And he said, well, I wanted you to make the decision for yourself. But that's just, a testament to my parents. They were so supportive throughout my running career, high school, West Point. They never missed a meet in high school. They made as many meets as they could in college. And they were just fantastic parents.
So what's it like to run at West Point and run for West Point?
So Coach Quiller, again, to his credit, he made it clear that running will not be your first priority when you're at West Point. It's really third. It's academics first. It's your military training and other parts of, military, obviously, your service aspect is part of being a cadet on top of academics. And then he's like, third on the list is going to be running. And he said, can you accept that? And I said, absolutely. I honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to run in college anyways. I thought I did, but it wasn't something like there's no question I'm doing it. So I thought that was a great way to be a college runner. It's not going to be my entire identity. It's not going to be my entire life. It's just going to be part of my academic and military training.
So give us some memories of your West Point running career, or some things that you cherish about that experience.
My teammates are going to be the top of my memory. We were as close as you can imagine, both the men's and women's team. And, we travel all over the country racing, mostly on the East Coast, but all over the country. We just dealt with challenges. We all had the challenging, rigorous academic programs that we were all trying to survive while also running. I ran all 4 years. It was nonstop cross country in the spring, right into the winter track program. Started in January.
Was that indoor?
That was indoor. And then right into the outdoor season, which lasted straight up to the end of May when school got out. So yeah, it was challenging. It was nonstop, but I wouldn't change for the world. Great memories.
So at West Point, is that where you developed your love of flying in helicopters?
Well, I did not fly until I don't believe I ever rode in a helicopter when I was a cadet. Some people had that opportunity. I didn't. But when you're graduating at West Point, we call it a firstie. You're a first class cadet, a firstie. You get to select your branch based on class rank. And I was torn up until the day the selection closed of whether I was going to be an infantry officer or an aviation officer. I had certain infantry officers say, Cory, you're a runner. Runners in the infantry are put on a pedestal and can do no wrong. You will be ahead of many of your colleagues just by the fact that you can run.
And why is that?
If any branch, infantry really focuses on physical training and your physical ability for good reason.
Yes.
And the soldiers just look up to people who can run fast.
That's awesome.
Maybe now it's more like CrossFit and other type, but really being able to run a fast 2 mile was just something that really put you ahead of your peers. So I strongly consider that. Awesome. And I love working with soldiers, and the infantry is an incredible branch. A lot of my classmates went on to be Green Berets and other very, very cool branches of infantry, if you will. But I selected aviation because I did want to fly. It sounded very cool from all the people I was interviewing and talking with. And I also had a tactical officer. They're usually captains, sometimes majors, who oversee cadets. And one said, "Well, Cory, do you want to keep running? Do you want to run long of your life?" I said, "Well, yes." And she told me, she's like, "Well, a lot of infantry officers I know can't walk very well. They have awful knees. They have very poor ankles. Their backs hurt, and because you're carrying all that weight all the time." And that kind of weighed on me too. So I kind of weighed those two options and went aviation. And I don't regret it. Although if I had another chance at it, I might try infantry because it's an incredible branch. And I think I would have really enjoyed leading soldiers on the ground.
So you actually had to make a decision, in effect, without ever even having flown in a military helicopter.
Yes.
You just had to make that decision.
Exactly.
You thought you might like to fly, and
yep.
And how did that turn out for you?
I did love flying.
Fairly great.
Yeah, I did love flying. When you go into flight school, again, you get to pick your airframe based on two things: your ranking within the your flight school class, but also needs of the Army. I was fortunate enough. There was, I don't know how many, about 40 of my classmates in our aviation class, and there were only two Blackhawks, two Kiowas, which I flew, two Apaches, and I believe the rest were Blackhawks.
Okay.
I'm not even sure there was any Chinooks in there.
So for those who are not experts in military aviation, so the Blackhawk is like a battle wagon almost, right?
Yeah.
You're moving lots of things around, and the Kiowa is a more of a scout close support kind of platform, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was traditionally a scout reconnaissance platform. At some point, we, during the prior to the Iraq War, we started arming it for protection, but also a little bit to serve as an attack platform as well. So yeah, it kind of did dual reconnaissance and also close air support for soldiers on the ground. So you picked how did that choice go? Did you just pick the Kiowa, or how did that happen? Yes, I was gonna say the Kiowa picked me, but I picked the Kiowa. I just thought it was a fantastic mission. You get to fly the most. It's the least advanced aircraft, but that means you're flying more traditionally, where we call it flying by the seat of your pants. You're just looking out, observing, feeling how fast you're going, things like that. So it's a great platform. You got to fly the most hours, and the mission was great because you're right on top of the infantry and other ground units in Iraq and Afghanistan that you get to support.
So for those who are not as familiar, if you're looking up in the sky and maybe your local sheriff or police department has a Bell helicopter,
yeah.
How is it different from that? It's kind of similar, right?
It's very similar.
It's a very light platform, and I would think very exposed and probably very dangerous in a lot of settings to be so exposed.
I think so, yes. You're exactly right about a news helicopter or even maybe a Flight for Life, some of the smaller ones.
Yeah.
The platform was a Bell 206. And the Army took that, added some rotor blades, made it a little bit more powerful because we loaded it on with weapons and armor and all other type of military equipment, including that ball that we have on top of our helicopter. If you saw that,
yes.
So we turned what was a platform that I think maybe had a max weight of 3,000 pounds, and we bumped it up to a little over 5,000. Yeah. So it's very, very similar.
How do you learn to fly something like that? And you've never flown before, right? You didn't take flying lessons in high school or fly at West Point. So how did you learn to fly? What happens?
Well, Army has, I think, some of the best instructors in the world. But it's funny you ask that. So you show up at flight school. You do, if I recall, only a few days in the simulator. It's not a whole lot. You fly in the simulator. You crash many times trying to hover. And then it's like, all right, let's get to the real aircraft. So we go out and fly these light aircraft. Everyone flies up, no matter if you fly a Chinook or a Blackhawk or a Kiowa or an Apache. Everyone starts in the little training aircraft, which is very similar to the Bell 206 Kiowa Warrior. So we go out and fly that with an instructor and a stick buddy. There's always 3 of us in the aircraft. My assigned stick buddy, you don't get a pick, was a great officer from Saudi Arabia. He was not an exchange, but he came to flight school in the U.S., had never flown, just like the majority of the U.S. soldiers who were learning to fly. And we flew for about 10 to 12 hours with the instructor. And then one of the first things they do is you go solo, where it's just you and your stick buddy. And the stick buddy is told, like, you're not an instructor. You're not allowed to touch anything. You're just there as a counterweight.
Okay.
And you never know when it's going to come. It's kind of nerve wracking. And you felt that, like, okay, I'm going out here. I'm doing this trainings. I'm picking up and landing a hover probably about 50% of the time. Other 50% of the time, my instructor has to come on the controls to prevent me from killing, him and everyone else around us. But the Army, and I think they've gotten away from it because it's quite dangerous. But now, but back then, we would do the hovering about 10 to 15 hours into our training for confidence. It's like you use your instructor a little bit as a crutch. We know you can land this aircraft. We know you can hover. We're going to prove it by having you solo. So one day we showed up and he's like, my goal is to have you solo today. We'll go out there and do a couple takeoffs and traffic patterns. And then if you're good to go, we will, I'll hop out. Your stick buddy will get in the front and you'll go solo. So I still remember we were sitting there on the runway doing some takeoffs and landings. Flying was quite easy to do a traffic pattern.
And where was this? What
this is in Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Alabama. Okay.
Yeah, outside of Enterprise, Alabama, about an hour north of Panama City Beach. But that day, I did some takeoffs and landings. I probably landed 1 or 2 on my own. The other 2 or 3, the instructor had to come on the controls. And then he said, you're going to go solo. And I'm thinking, I've got a 50-50 chance of surviving this. But sure enough, they know what they're doing. We did just fine. No hard landings, no issues. None of my classmates had any issues. So
how many hours then of training until you're actually operational?
I want to say it was a little over 100, maybe 120.
Doesn't seem like very many hours.
It's really not very many hours.
I mean, that's a 200-mile race.
Yeah.
I mean, to put it in ultramarathon terms.
Exactly.
Right? So that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And did you love it? I mean, did you say, this is for me? Did you have this feeling like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
I think so. Yeah.
Why the pause?
I don't want to lie. I really love flying. I love the mission, especially when we were overseas and we were flying, 8 or 9 days a week, 8 or 9 days out of a 10-day period.
Yeah.
Often 7 days a week. And it became second nature. You almost feel like you could do it in your sleep. The mission was great. And I love that. But I compare it to some of my other soldiers who they really love flying. I mean, they did it for fun. Every weekend they'd go out there on their own aircraft or rent aircraft. So I loved it, but not to a point where I was like, I think I'm going to be a pilot for life. So I was somewhere between.
It's really interesting. My grandfather was one of the founders of the Experimental Aircraft Association.
Okay.
And so he flew his whole life, and he wanted to, it was Great Depression and having money. And so he was drifting around the Midwest, ended up hanging out at what is now Midway Airport, and eventually got himself a job as a mechanic and worked on airplanes, and then got himself a job delivering Piper Cubs from the factory in Pennsylvania to wherever somebody had ordered one, and he'd hitchhike back. So if he'd fly it out to California, he'd have to figure out how he'd get to California by himself, no instrumentation or anything.
Sure.
And then he'd have to hitchhike all the way back to Pennsylvania and do another one. And so he loved flying. His whole life was about flying. And he used to say that he was unusual in that regard, that there were just a few people that were kind of like him that just wanted to fly all the time.
Oh, well, that makes me feel better. Sometimes I feel guilty about not loving it as much as I should, but I did get the sense that I was in the majority of people who we loved our job. Don't get me wrong. We loved to fly. But it wasn't one of those things when we hung it up that, it's just a part of us is missing.
Yeah, I get it. That's so interesting. And what ended up happening with him was that he was a bit too old for World War II. And he ended up flying, he did civilian Air Patrol and so on, worked during the war. But he ended up just doing aviation mechanics and then designing planes. And that ended up being what he actually enjoyed even more than flying was that. He got to this point in his life where that's what really made him super happy. He still flew, but he would develop his own planes and build his own planes. But he wanted to just work on planes and tinker with them and see what they could do. But I wanted to tell you this. His name was Milt Colden, by the way. He lived in northern Wisconsin. So you can just imagine this tiny town in northern Wisconsin. He was afraid of helicopters.
Really?
And I said, Grandpa, would you go up in an airplane with me? Oh, yeah, any kind of plane, and he'd take me up. I said, would you arrange for me to go up in a helicopter? He's like, no, they're completely unsafe. They're not stable. It's a terrible idea. I'll never fly it. He'd only been in one helicopter maybe in his life, and he hated it. So he thought it was too dangerous. And he was building his own, aircraft in his own shop and flying them around, testing them only himself, no one else, So I think it's fascinating that you would go and just fly helicopters just out of the gates. As I grew up as somebody who thought that's the scariest thing in the world would be to fly helicopters. So.
Yeah. Especially my airframe of the 4 Army aircraft I mentioned, Kai was the only one that's single engine.
Yeah,
so we would regularly twice a year, if not more, have to practice simulated engine failures. Always with an instructor, but you learn quickly how fast a 5,000-pound paperweight falls out of the sky. There's very little gliding when we practice. I've flown fixed wing as well, and as a civilian, and we practice engine failures. But those are kind of boring because you can glide for so long in a Piper or a.
That's what he used to say. Yeah, and he had a lot of engine failures from time to time.
I bet.
So, but. I have to ask you then, you end up serving in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So maybe you could talk a bit about that and what some of your missions were. And it had to be super intense. And then also you met your wife, who is a helicopter pilot as well, and talk about that.
Sure. I'll start at flight school. My wife, Hope, absolutely wonderful, so supportive of everything I do. We met in the first week of flight school. It was just a social gathering for all the new pilots. And we met, and we didn't start dating right away, but I still remember meeting outside.
Was this in Alabama?
This is in Alabama.
Okay.
By the end of flight school, we had selected different airframes. I flew the Kiowa. She was going to fly the Blackhawk. We weren't engaged yet, but we knew it was serious. Mm-hmm. And this is going a little bit off a tangent, but we knew something was special, but we also don't want to rush it. You don't want to say, I need to get engaged and married, because the Army only recognizes somebody who's married. That's the only guarantee to be stationed together. And
I see.
It's not a very strong guarantee, but they'll work with you. But if you're engaged or dating, you might as well be complete strangers. And the Army said, well, we told them we'll go anywhere in the world. It looks like you need pilots in Alaska. We would love to go to Alaska. There's a Kiowa unit there. There's Blackhawk unit there. And they would not work with us. It was a little bit shocking. So I reached out to an old colleague or an old mentor from West Point. His name is Bernie Banks, fantastic. And I wrote to him and asked him what his thoughts were. And he was very honest. And he said, do you think it's serious, Cory? Because if it's not, it could be very awkward. These units are very small. If you have a breakup, it can make it quite awkward. And I thought about it, and I valued his advice. And I said, no, Colonel Banks, this is it. This is serious. And so he put an email in, and within 5 minutes they said, yeah, no problem. We can get him to Alaska.
Wow. So you were in Fairbanks?
We were in Fairbanks.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
I love Fairbanks.
Yeah, Fairbanks is fantastic.
Like Fairbanks?
We loved it. we absolutely loved it. Our stuff was there. I say our stuff. We were stationed there for 48 months. We were probably only there for 18 to 20 of them. So we got up there in March, and my unit was deploying for a 12-month deployment in July. And
where were you going?
Iraq. We were going to be in Tikrit for the whole year, and that's where we stayed. And the week before I deployed, we got engaged. And I was thinking, we can do this. It's only 12 months. Yeah. And halfway through my deployment, she deployed halfway through. She got orders some point within the first couple months.
Where did she go?
She went to Iraq as well. She went to Baghdad, and then I think she was stationed at a couple other places. So it was fun. We were able to see each other a couple of times. In fact, we did some marriage counseling once where she picked me up into crit, flew me back down to Baghdad, and we met with their chaplain. Kind of a fun story. So, but yeah, challenging, right? We were engaged for a week before we were separated for roughly 18 months. But I think it made our relationship stronger. We spent a lot of time on Skype when the internet worked.
So talk about Iraq.
Sure.
What were your missions like? You were. What years were you there for? What?
So the first one I was there from 2009 to 2010.
Okay.
And then about a year later, I think we were there for the entire year of 2012. Yeah, 2012. Oh, excuse me, 2011.
2011.
Yeah, we left Alaska in 2012.
Okay.
And then when we were stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas, we went to Afghanistan.
And what was that?
That was in 2013.
That's a lot of deployment in some really dangerous places.
Yeah, it was. As a pilot, you asked about hours. I left flight school, I call it 125, 130 hours. But by the time I finished my 1-year deployment in Iraq, I was well over 1,000. The learning curve is fast. Your experience level grows so quickly when you deploy. So as a pilot, it is really nice to be deployed because you get to fly a ton. Some to the point where you're begging for breaks, but we didn't have enough aircraft. The missions never stopped. We didn't have enough pilots.
Yeah.
We had enough aircraft. And we would fly 7, 8, 9 days out of a 10-day period until we had a mandatory break. And so a lot of flying. But we supported all types of units. We worked with special forces often. In fact, my first deployment, we had a dedicated unit. I think the entire 12-month deployment, the scout team, we called it the scout weapons team, was dedicated to the whether it was SEALs or Green Berets or any other type of special force unit. We were assigned to them, and we would go out and support them every single night. Mm-hmm. That was the mission. They owned us, and in a good way. Like they owned that aircraft, and we worked directly with them. The other times we would work with more conventional units, whether they were, a convoy going from Baghdad up to Mosul, or even farther north. We would support them. Oftentimes there's other direct action missions that we would support. So that kind of covered both Iraq missions and quite frankly, Afghanistan as well.
What was your impression of Iraq and Afghanistan? Just sort of general impressions.
We were there. My first deployment was the end of the surge, so it was still kind of hot. There were still, oftentimes getting shot at and some hostilities towards us. The second deployment was part of Operation New Dawn, where we were building up the local government. That was a calmer mission. I got the sense that the local Iraqis enjoyed that we were there, providing protection and some stability in the region. As we know, a lot of that collapsed years later. But when I was there, it was, especially the second deployment was quite calm.
How about Afghanistan?
Very similar. I was in Kandahar. It was not quite as, there wasn't as much fighting as there had been in previous years, but there was still quite a bit of action and, quite a bit of hostility towards us. Oftentimes we would see people setting up roadside bombs in the middle of the night, mm-hmm. but we often wouldn't do anything about it because we knew where they were. We'd just go around them the next day. But we did a lot of direct missions with the ground forces and the Green Berets. And the mission was pretty similar between Iraq and Afghanistan.
So I'm thinking about you. You come out of West Point. You're this incredible runner. I mean, you've been running like every season for 4 years solid. I mean, you must just be in phenomenal physical shape. I can't even imagine as a 4-year athlete at that level. And then you have to learn obviously something totally new. And what about the running at this point? What happens then as you start to fly helicopters and then you get to you meet Hope and and she's a runner too, I understand. Yeah. And so then you get deployed, these long deployments. And are you able to run? Are you able to train? Maybe talk about that. Sure. How do you continue to be a runner?
Well, it's very kind of you. I don't know if I was that good of a runner leaving college, but I was, as most college runners are, in pretty good shape. I I slowed down quite a bit running wise. I would still do the occasional base 5K, 10K. I really ramped up for the Army 10 miler, which was a fantastic race if you ever get a chance to do it. And the Army was really fun because each base sends a team, and I was often lucky enough to captain the team, and we'd fly from either Fairbanks or Fort Riley or Alabama to lead a team, and we would train really hard when we were competing against other bases. So that was probably the extent of my serious running in the Army. But to answer your question, I didn't run too much in Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot more CrossFit, gym type workouts. We had some treadmills. It's funny. I enjoy running on a treadmill now, but I hated it back then. I just hated it. I don't know. I just found it was boring. I just, nothing to look at. But now maybe I appreciate now that it's kinder on your knees and your body.
I have to laugh because just down the hall, and we're at our law firm here in downtown Denver. My colleague Janeda Kay, he actually was able to get himself marathon ready. He'd never run a marathon entirely on a treadmill.
Okay.
He didn't do a single run on a road or a street or a trail. He was in India working on a project for one of our clients, and it really was not a place where he could go out and run. It wasn't safe for him to go run anywhere. So he just basically decided to run a marathon entirely training on a treadmill and nothing else until he literally hit the road in that marathon. He did really well. He had a good time.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But I don't know. That sounds like a total nightmare to me. I can't even imagine. So, but I understand in the military, and I think about some of the places that you were stationed. Was it possible? Were there places that you could run, within bases that were safe, or was it just a lot of out and back?
A lot of out and backs. These airfields are pretty huge that we were at, whether you're in Mosul or Tikrit. So there were areas to run. What made it challenging are some of the restrictions that sometimes I ignored, sometimes I didn't, where you have to run with your weapon. Sounds good in theory, but I can't run with a pistol. Or you have to run with a buddy. Well, that's kind of hard too, because people didn't like to run all that much. You would think that in the Army, everyone likes to run, but I think it was pretty rare. And so every once in a while, I'd look around. Okay, it's a clear day. It's just too beautiful not to run. And those days are pretty rare over there because it's so dusty.
Yes.
And so sometimes I said, I just need a break, and I'd go out and get 5-6 miles in. Always kind of looking over my shoulder because you never know who's out there, who's breached. Well, I don't remember anyone breaching a perimeter, but you just always need to be careful. So I would run some and a lot of out and backs, and maybe I'd run with a buddy where we'd maybe run a mile back and forth at different paces, but we were technically part of the buddy system. Some treadmills, some road running, but mostly just worked out in the gym.
So how did you manage to just continue to stay in such good shape? I mean, you plainly stayed in shape.
I just every day I need to work out as most people did. The Army, for better or worse, always instilled that in soldiers that physical training every single day. As a pretty serious runner, I didn't really love that because I never could take that time really and get in good shape. We did unit runs. 12, 13-minute miles, maybe. It was just hard to really get serious training. So it would often require gym after work, but that's how I stayed in shape. It was just kind of part of my identity and my wife's identity. We would work out every day, probably for our sanity, but also for our physical health. And so we just always tried to stay in shape and always try to work out every single day.
So you have a little girl,
yes,
Lark.
Yes.
So when did Lark come into the world?
May of 2020. Shortly after COVID.
So were you, when did you finish your military service?
We got out in June of 2015.
2015.
Yeah.
So talk about, if you don't mind, talk about your marriage. So how did you build a marriage when you're in those kind of situations and, you have some shared interests, but you have to get to know each other. And sometimes you're living together, but a lot of times you're apart. So.
Yeah. It's hard to describe how it works, how a good marriage works, but I think we have a great one. It works very well for us. We learn often or very early in that communication is key. And so, and we learned that by being deployed so often that, all you had to do was talk. You couldn't do anything else. There wasn't a discussion of what do you want to do tonight? It was just, we're going to sit down and talk for an hour, sometimes two. But we I think the shared interest for us is key. We both like to hike, both like to ski. We did all that stuff in Alaska, which is a fantastic place, as you know, to both hike and ski. We like to travel together. So it was a natural fit for us. And, I'm fortunate enough to find her. But yeah, we decided to delay a little bit having kids because it just didn't seem feasible in the Army with the amount of deployments we had. So we waited till we got out. It took a little bit longer, but yeah, we had Lark right after, about a month and a half after the lockdown of the first pandemic, or of our pandemic, if you will.
Wow. So let's talk about then your transition. So you both finished your military service in 2015.
Yes.
And then what kind of plans are you making at this point for the next phase of your careers?
Yeah, it's a good question. The military is great for education. They paid for 3 of my advanced degrees, which is fantastic. But we both had the GI Bill, and when we knew we wanted to get out and go back to grad school. She wanted to get her MBA. I knew I wanted to go to law school. So the biggest question is, where do we go? What would set us up best professionally? And, we talked to many friends, a lot of lawyers who are here in Denver. And we decided that we wanted to plant our roots in Denver.
And why Denver?
So, I grew up in Nebraska, and we used to come up here, not skiing, but we'd come up here and hike and camp in the summers. And I just always looked west and knew that I wanted to be here eventually. I always say I got here as fast as I could. But we did a weighted matrix about, the industries that were here, the weather, the outdoors, all the activities that we could do. And Denver seemed like the natural choice.
So you just picked a place that you thought you might be happy.
Yeah.
And be able to build a marriage and a life here.
Exactly.
So how has that worked out? Are you happy?
We love it. We absolutely love it here. I'm sure you do too.
Well, I kind of spoiled. I grew up here.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate in that respect. But I do think it's extraordinary. The lifestyle is extraordinary that we have. And the fact that we can get into trail running, for example, and we don't have to drive really to do it. I mean, you could even run from downtown. I mean, I have actually run from downtown all the way to the mountains and trail run before on some of these long runs. And if you live on the west side or you live close to the mountains, it's even easier. But yeah, it's an extraordinary. There aren't that many cities, I think, that are like that in the United States. I mean, Denver and maybe parts of Albuquerque or Boise or Salt Lake, but there's just not that many places where you can have that kind of access. So.
Yeah, it was clear that, being outdoors and the things activities that I mentioned, hiking and skiing, biking, some of those things were important to us and important to our marriage. So I think that's what sold us on Denver. The other place we were strongly considering is Seattle, but I was kind of angling towards 300 days of sunshine, or
no, we had that
I don't know how much it rains in Seattle, but we'll call it 300 days of rain.
We had the same discussion because my wife is from Washington State, and we were trying to make the same decision.
Yeah.
So, but I think we chose wisely long term. No offense to Seattle.
Yeah.
So another thing about Denver is just this amazing legal market. So talk about your law school path. Where did you go to law school? And you had this amazing military career. And then how did you get into practice?
So older than some, I don't want to say most, because there are others that are older than me. But yeah, we came out here to Denver. Hope and I both went to the University of Denver for grad school. And it's been fantastic. I still see a ton of my classmates all over town. I was fortunate enough to land a federal clerkship for Judge Art Jackson in the federal district court here. And I did that in 2018 to 2019. And that's really that is where I started my ultra running journey.
Brooke Jackson is one of the great judges ever. So
yeah,
I've known him for so many years.
Okay.
He was the chief judge in our district.
Oh, sure.
On the west side, headquartered in Golden, where we live, where I grew up. And he's a great cyclist.
He is.
I mean, he's amazing on a road bike. So absolutely,
he's fantastic. Really encouraged me. Although I think he thought I was crazy running a 50 miler. And then we'll probably talk about this later. But my very first 100 was that same summer when I finished my clerkship, and I left. I think my last day was a Thursday, and Friday we drove up to Custer, South Dakota for a Saturday start race.
That's the lean horse, right?
Yes.
So this is fascinating to me. So you had this amazing collegiate experience where you were really running, track and indoor track, which is, I think, a different animal.
Yeah.
And then also running cross country at a very high level. And then, you're doing your military service in a lot of really rough, difficult, and often dangerous places. And then you come back really to being able to run as you're going to law school and so on. But what was it that made you decide to, in effect, pivot from road racing and trail racing? I know cross country is a little bit of a different beast, but
sure. Going
to ultramarathoning, I now think of you as an ultramarathoner, but you're a really fast road marathoner too. So you're able to do both, which is very cool. But what made you pivot toward ultra?
I think just seeing something different, doing something different. We were talking earlier, ultra running wasn't even on my radar. For example, I hadn't even heard of the Cowboy 200 until I started listening to your podcast. I hadn't,
the pride of Nebraska.
Yes. I don't know exactly what got in, what planted the seed for ultra running, other than I just wanted to try something different. I had run enough road marathons. I probably run 10 to 11 road marathons, not that many, more than some, but, definitely fewer than others. And I just wanted to try something different. I'd read about Leadville 100, read, all the books about it that most people have read. And I got kind of excited to try something new. And so, I 10 years ago, as you mentioned, I think on one of your podcasts, that the gold standard was the 100-miler.
Oh, yeah.
Not only was most ultras not on my radar, but a 200 wasn't even contemplated. But I thought the 100 is the gold standard. That's what I want to try. Why would I start with anything different? So in my mind, my goal that summer in 2019 was to run 100. I was smart enough to realize that I should probably run at least a 50-miler before.
But you started with a 50-miler. You didn't start with a 50K, right?
That's right, yeah.
That's impressive.
Jumped right in. Yeah, just jumped right in.
And that was North Fork?
It was North Fork and Buffalo Creek, right outside of Pine. I think
just to the west of us. Maybe.
Yeah.
If you got in the car downtown, you could maybe be there in like an hour and 10 or something.
Yeah, it's probably even closer. It's about 45 minutes from my house.
Not too far from where we are.
Yeah, and I remember seeing you one of the races, maybe the later ones.
I did the 50K. I've never done the 50 mile. So it's a hard course, I think.
It is, yeah. So the first time I ran it, again, I was using it as a training run for the 100-miler, which I hadn't signed up for, but I was thinking, let me run the 50-miler, see how it feels, and then I'll likely enter the 100.
Okay.
I think I told you before that race that year was only about 48 miles. And I swear I wouldn't have been able to run another mile if a bear was chasing me. It was just, I didn't have any energy. I was done.
What did you do for nutrition?
Yeah, I made all the rookie mistakes. I was coming from the road. So I saw, M&Ms and chips and ginger ale and Coke and peanut butter and jelly, thinking, why would I eat that? I need the honey stinger waffles and energy gels. And to this day, if you put a honey stinger waffle in front of me, I'd probably get sick.
Yeah.
I ate those for 7 or 8 hours. I think that year I ran it about like 9 hours and 15 minutes.
It's good.
And
really good.
About I'd say about hour 7, maybe 7.5. I just couldn't eat anything.
Yeah.
So I hobbled in with very little energy. And yeah, again, I was so thankful it was short that year, as opposed to 2023 when I last ran it. I think it was 2 miles long. So it was a 15-mile race. Yeah. So the difference between that as an ultra runner is pretty significant when you're running 15, sometimes longer minute miles.
It's kind of amazing to think about how I've talked about this in other podcasts too, how we have this habit as road marathoners or shorter distances, and we've got our gels, and you have, I don't know, maybe you have one with you, or you got 3 with you. It just kind of depends on what you can fit, right? And what's on the tables. But all you're doing is swapping a gel, and maybe getting a sip of water or something. You're not even running with a bottle or anything typically. So you've run Boston, did really well in Boston in 2025.
Yes.
And did you run with a bottle, or how did you do it?
I ran. Yeah. To qualify for Boston, I ran Chicago, and I ran with a bottle the first 5 miles. And I thought, this is crazy.
You just threw the bottle away, right?
I've never seen so many cups of water in my life. As far as you can see. So Boston, I did not run and with a bottle, but I trained with the Gatorade endurance formula. So kind of like Tailwind.
Yes,
it's got carbs in it, and
good stuff.
And I was very dialed into my nutrition. I was trying to take 60 to maybe 70 grams of carbs an hour. And so, I kind of mapped it out about when do I need to take. I was training with Morton gels because that's what was on the course.
Yeah.
And so I mapped it out, and I think I even wrote in my arm down to this is the mile I'm going to take it, because this is a mile before the Newton Hills. And so every aid station, and they're every 2 miles, I believe, maybe even closer, I would hit the Gatorade endurance table on the right-hand side, and then I'd veer across the left side and get water. I probably, ran an extra half mile just doing that. But I really want to take in a lot of water. And that year it was really great weather, but still warmer than I thought. It was, I think the race started at 10:30 and it was, probably in the mid 60s. And training in Colorado in the spring and over the winter, I was training in much cooler temperatures. If it hadn't been this year, but this year I've been set up. But it was a pretty cold. It was a pretty cold year.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You get that nutrition and hydration down eventually in road marathoning, as you did, but then you jump to ultra. You jump to a 50 mile, and it's like you can't use the same approach. It just doesn't really work.
Exactly.
Especially when you get up, 100K, 100 mile, you're going to absolutely just crash and burn if you do that. So how did you, because you did lean horse, how did you do the jump then from 50 mile to the 100 mile lean horses in South Dakota? And tell us about that race too.
Yeah, happy to. As I said, after that 50 miler, I'll call it the 48 mile race, I just thought there's no way I can run 100. I couldn't even run 50 miles. I didn't think that day. But, as a week or two go on, you kind of repress some of that pain. You think about all the great memories and how, they're really enjoyable, especially out in North Fork. Beautiful course. And so I kind of forgot about how bad it hurt. I'm like, you know what? I can do 100. And so I signed up. I went out to Custer, right day after my clerkship ended with Judge Jackson. And that race was kind of maybe unique, maybe not, but it started at noon on a kind of a hot August day. I think it was in the mid 80s. That was a challenging start time, but also kind of nice because I was, you're fresh, obviously, when you start. And so 4 or 5 hours into the race, it starts cooling down. And so when you finally start feeling that fatigue, the temperatures are dropping and, this is a doable race. But I finished, my first 100 miles under 24 hours, which was my goal.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Completely arbitrary. It kind of felt like the sub 3 hour marathon. Yeah. So that's just kind of what I was angling for. And also I realized that if I finish before noon, it's probably going to benefit me because it's just going to get hotter as the day goes on. But my nutrition was better then. I realized that I need to eat whole food and real food. So
what did you fuel yourself with in the lean horse?
Anything that sounded good. Peanut butter and jelly, watermelon. I don't think I ever did the chips or candy. But I did, some of the ginger ale and even Coke to settle my stomach if I got sick. But I just knew that if I stopped eating like 7 to 8 hours into a 24-hour race, I'm done. There's no way you can finish a race like that if you have no energy in your body. So
that was, what year was that then?
That was 2019.
2019. And then you did Run Rabbit Run 100.
Yes.
And that's a whole different animal than the lean horse, right? That's a tough mountain race. So talk about that one. Was that the next year?
No, I took a 5-year break.
So talk about that.
That was 2024.
Did you do any ultras in between?
I did some 50Ks.
Okay.
I didn't get very creative. I did 2 50Ks out at the North Fork. And then my buddy Alex Demmer, he's an attorney here in town as well. Yeah. We decided let's run 100. We signed up for Leadville, didn't get in, and that same morning, the minute we were refreshing our emails because we assumed we wouldn't get into Leadville, we went right over to Run Rabbit Run and secured the last couple spots.
Amazing to get into Run Rabbit Run too. Awesome.
We were in the tortoise division. I think we could have run in the in the hair division.
Oh, absolutely right.
The cutoff was 30 hours.
Course.
We ran right around 26 hours,
yeah,
I believe.
You did great.
But also adds a little pressure, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah. So we ran in the slower division. It was great. It's about 104 miles. You know, they admit it. They're like, yeah, it's a 100-mile race, but let's be honest. Most people say it's usually 103 to 105 miles. You can't trust GPS out there. A fantastic race. And even though we were out in the course for 2 hours longer than I was at Lean Horse, I was just not nearly as sore as I was at for Lean Horse. I think that's because the varying terrain up and down the mountains. You know, I don't know if you've run the race or looked into it, but
no, I've never run Rabbit Run. I'm sure I've looked at it. And last year I was planning on running they have a 50, right?
They do.
And I tried. I didn't get into it. I was disappointed, but I'm gonna. It's on my list. I want to try to do it sometime. Yeah,
fantastic race. It starts out at the base of the ski slope, and you run up it. Yeah, about amazing. A 3,000-foot climb.
Amazing.
You know, obviously you are fresh then, but you're kind of like ready to go, and you can't pass anyone. It's just you're just in this single file line, and it's kind of funny. You intuitively know that there's no rush. I'm out here for 24 plus hours.
Yes.
The extra 10 minutes I spend on this hill is going to be so negligible, but you still like are always kind of looking like, can I pass somebody? Can I get up there? The race director actually says to spread out and don't go on the trails, just run straight up the mountain so you don't, you know, further increase the trail. But no one wants to run through knee-high grass the first, you know, hour of an ultra run.
Yeah, no,
so most people just stay on the little switchback trail. But it was a great race. You know, by that point, I had run a few ultras. We ran the 50 miler again in North Fork. I need to get more creative, but it was a great training run. We did that in June as a training run for steamboats. Yeah, that was a great summer of running.
So, and at the same time, did you continue during that period to run road marathons? Were you running on the roads, or were you mostly doing trail running?
I mostly trail running that year. Okay. Yeah, I ran Chicago in 2023.
Okay.
And then
How was Chicago?
It was fantastic. Yes, I was fortunate enough to run, and I think I read an article. It was scientifically the perfect temperature. We started around 49 degrees and ended at 54. And that was the same year that Kelvin Kipton broke the world record. Yeah. And that was a great boost. I knew it was perfect running weather and just perfect conditions. And I was probably at mile 20. Or maybe earlier when the announcers mentioned that, and Kelvin Kipton broke the world record. It was just a great boost, knowing like this. Yeah. I can't waste this day. This is the day where if I want to run fast, I should do it. And so I went for it, and I thought I was well dialed in and a great training run, a great race plan, and I was just kind of shocked. You know, fast forward a year and a half later at Boston, that I ran 4 minutes faster than I did in Chicago. Slower course, not as great.
It's a hard course.
Not as ideal conditions. It just kind of goes to show you how important training is, following the training plan, following the nutrition plan. I think that's what really put me over the top at Boston.
So would you do Boston again?
I would. Yeah, I ran a marathon on the Fusky Islands. I think I'm saying it right. It's outside of Hilton Head.
Yes.
In January.
Yes.
I ran it with the college buddy, excuse me.
Was that your PR?
Which one?
The Fusky?
No, that was a slow one.
Was it a slow one?
We ran about 4 miles on straight sand.
Oh my gosh! Really?
We actually passed the.
I'm not familiar with this race. So tell us about this race.
It's for the marathon. It's 2 loops. You run the half marathon course twice. Very small. I finished, I think, 4th, and often many times I was running all by myself. But the race director said it was 90% paved. Or the course description said 90% paved, 10% crushed crab shell. And I thought, that's interesting. What's crushed crab shell going to feel like? Well, really, it was about at least 4 miles of just pure sand.
Pure sand.
And we passed, like I said, the pacer biker who it was too thick to bike through.
Yeah, I can relate to this. So, I'm coming off Saturday. I ran the Monument Valley 50K down on the Navajo Nation, and there are just about 7 miles of sand dunes. Oof. And I'm still really hurting from the sand dunes. I have to say, they just suck your soul right out of your.
Yes.
People were, their shoes were popping off, and it was just unbelievable. People were having to sit down and pour the sand out of their shoes. Oh. I was able to keep my shoes on, but it was just nuts.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready for Badwater, Cape Fear. I'm doing in 3 weeks.
Okay.
And that's on the beach on the Outer Banks on a place called Bald Head Island.
Okay.
And it's at the water line. So I'm thinking, what am I going to use for a shoe? Do you have any tips about what to do with the shoe? I need a road shoe / gravel shoe that I can run on sand for 30. There's 38 of the 51 miles are on sand. So
yeah, I don't think I'm the right guy to give you shoe advice for that. I wore Alpha Flies, and to be honest with you, it was fine.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, it just was not what we expected. We were running and thinking, okay, surely around that bend there'll be pavement, and it just like kept going.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah,
that's kind of funny.
One guy who's run that race 2 or 3 years in a row said usually it's damper, so the sand is a lot more firm. But he's like, it's been so dry this year that it feels like we're running on the beach.
Wow.
But I think I did enough to qualify for Boston. So back to your question, I like
fantastic.
We'll run Boston next year.
So you qualified it off of that race to be able to go to Boston next year. That's great. So, yeah, you think you'll keep doing Boston?
Yeah.
I guess you don't know.
I'm not sure every single year. It's a fantastic race. My best memory of any marathon is coming from Boston. It's a fantastic experience. That's where my wife went to college. So she was really excited to go back, and we took Lark, and we just had a great time in Boston. But it's a busy, stressful weekend, right? You go through the expo.
Yes.
It's hard to find hotels. If you want to stay near the finish line, which we did, it was about a mile walk over to the bus. You get on the bus 4 hours before the race. You get there.
Yeah, the bus fleet is really something in the morning in Boston. So, and just hanging out for a long time before the race starts. Yeah. It's just, you have to be prepared for that. First time I ran Boston, I remember I didn't even have like a poncho or anything. Okay. And I got out there, and I don't know, and it had occurred to me that it was like 3 hours until race time.
Yeah.
And I was so cold.
What year was that?
Jumping around. That would have been like 20, maybe that was 2017, I think. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a great race. I love that race, but you kind of learn trial and error in that one too. So, I mean, I learned after that I need to have a lot of stuff I could just throw away, that you donated all to the homeless, right? But I didn't think about that the first time I did it. So I was just jumping around in the cold. So.
I think I had the benefit of, in the last 10 years, podcasts and YouTube channels have really exploded. So all my training runs, I listened to every single Boston podcast I could find.
It's a good idea.
And in the middle of my run, I'd sit there and take notes about, what can you do to set yourself up to succeed? And a lot of those where you get there early, there's nowhere there's tents, but they're not heated. Yeah. So just bring as much cold weather clothes as you can afford to donate. And so I went there, I got there early, so I didn't stress out, and I found a place, and I took a little nap and my cold weather gear. I was looking around, and people were in shorts and tank tops, and there's 3 hours. Yeah,
that was me literally the first time. Yeah, I was hopelessly unprepared. So
people were asking for trash bags.
I had the trash bag on eventually. So
I had the fortune to have all that knowledge out there through podcasts and other blogs. And I read everything, and I tried to heed their advice, because I did want a PR. I didn't know how many times I'd run Boston. Yeah. And I wanted to take advantage of it.
Oh, it's exciting. So what's on tap for this year, Cory? What are you thinking?
Well, I'll find out this week, I believe, if I get into New York. So that would be a great race, because I would love to run New York to top off the three major marathons in the U.S.
My favorite road marathon by far.
Is that? Yeah, I've heard you talk about it. I would absolutely love to get in. I don't think I had the qualifying time. I qualified, I believe, about 10 minutes under my qualifying standard.
What's the qualifying time for you? How old are you?
42, and I believe it was 2:58.
Wow. Yeah, that's fast, isn't it? So.
But I've read it can take up to 12 to 15 minutes, depending on the year. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I hope it works out for you. Seriously, I do. So
I would love to do it. But if I don't, I still might. My goal is to run some ultra marathon every year. Mm-hmm. I love it. I may not be able to train as much as I want to every year, but I would enjoy competing in backyard ultra is my next thing. One of my neighbors invited me to run the U-Ray 100 backyard. I think it's called U-Ray Sky Pilot.
So how big is that loop? Is it literally a backyard, or is it like a quarter mile, or what is it?
It's the classic 4.167 mile loop. I've got all these questions in my head. Like, am I going to get bored? probably, but I love the idea about running a backyard where, timing's not an issue. It's a battle of attrition, right?
Yes,
last
right.
person standing.
Yes.
And so it's a race that I normally couldn't run with my buddy, just based on our different abilities. But when you were doing an backyard ultra, there's, you can run whatever pace you want as long as you make it back before the next hour starts.
We need to do this tunnel race together in Canada.
Okay.
Have you heard about this race? So there's a race, I think it's in Alberta, and Sinister Sports has it. That's the race director who puts it together. And it's a tunnel, a mining tunnel, and it's just you go out and back in that tunnel over and over again until it's like a last man standing sort of concept,
Is there any light?
No, and you have people coming at you the whole time, so you have to dodge them, and it gets to be really kind of difficult after a while.
You probably get literally tunnel vision.
Yeah, we need to look that up, and maybe we should do that one together. That would be fun. That'd be pretty fun to do that together.
Have you done a backyard?
I've never done a backyard ultra. I don't know that it's speaking to me in quite the same way, but the tunnel might speak to me because it sounds so completely ridiculous. But
well, if there's a place to do one, I think it's Ouray, because you've been there. It's beautiful.
Yeah, Ouray would be awesome to do that if you're going to be in someone's backyard, quote unquote backyard.
Yeah.
So how about your career right now is really taken off? You're at Quinn Emanuel, and talk about your international. It's one of the finest law firms in the world, and talk about your law practice. Pretty amazing. So
I joined Quinn Emanuel in last year, and so far I've been enjoying it. Fantastic cases, great colleagues. So I've really enjoyed that work and the way that we litigate. It just really speaks to me. Before that, I worked at Quinn Emanuel when I was at Hogan Lovells here in Denver as co-counsel, and I really saw how they litigated, and it just drew me to the firm. And then when I was in-house at Black Rifle Coffee Company, we hired Quinn Emanuel to litigate a case on our behalf, and it was just fantastic. Incredible group of guys. I work with that group quite a bit now. So that's how I got to Quinn. It's always kind of been on my list. They don't have an office in Denver, but they do allow you to work anywhere. So I'm out of the Dallas office technically. But I work with colleagues across the country. And
you're very active, I know, in the community too. So you're supporting West Point still, your alma mater.
Yes. Yeah, I was on I still work with plenty of veterans. I was on the West Point Society of Denver board for 7-8 years.
Wow.
That was a great way to get back and work with some fellow grads and also veterans. I joined my daughter's school board last year as a board of directors.
And where's Lark at school?
She's at STEM Highlands Ranch, so they're just about 2 or 3 miles south of our house. We live in Littleton, but Colorado is open choice, so you can really go wherever you want as long as you can you get accepted.
And tell us about STEM. Tell us about the school.
It's a STEM-based school. It's K through 12. It's one of the few. 12, okay. Yeah, it's one of the few charter schools that is K through 12. So, as a board director, we support the chief executive officer of the school and also the various other school leaders, and just help guide the direction of the school. So it's been fun, to lend my legal expertise when it comes up, and also work with our outside counsel. That's fantastic. So I've been active with charter schools too over the years. Yeah. Was one of the co-founders of Devlin High School. Okay. Back in the day. Yeah. So, but really appreciate that. And you've been involved in F3. Yes. Too. And have you heard of that? Oh, absolutely. Okay. And I went to a running camp that Eric Orton and Chris McDougall, who wrote Born to Run. Sure. Had a running camp a few years ago, and I got to go, and I was really excited to go to Bisbee, Arizona, and spend a week. And there was one of the other runners in it was really active in F3. Okay. So maybe talk about what is F3 and how do people get involved? It's it's F3. It stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. There are approximately, I think, 4,500 sites across the country and world. I believe we're active in 48 states. And I think 17 countries. So it's just a loose affiliation of workout networks where guys come together and work out. It's always free. It's peer led. It's just a great way to engage with other community members. I joined in 2021, and then maybe 2023, I started leading the group in Littleton, which loosely use the word lead. I just make sure that there's somebody who signed up each workout day, which our group is Tuesday and Thursday. Just make sure that somebody signed up to lead the group. you show up and you get a great, they're always hard. They're usually CrossFit / military boot camp style workouts. When I first joined, I was a little concerned that I wouldn't get the level of workout or assertion that I was hoping for. And then I had trouble walking for about a week. It was such a hard workout, such a challenging, again, very CrossFit oriented workout. And we do other community service projects as well, whether it's feeding people at the Denver Rescue Mission or delivering furniture for those in need, things like that.
So your whole career is really amazing how consistently running has played this role for you. I mean, running and of course, other forms of athletic endeavor. So what would you just say to someone who's, you get into your 40s and you've got this big career going as you do? I mean, how do you balance? What do you do? And you've got you're married, you've got a lovely daughter. How do you balance things out? How does that work?
It's not always easy. All those other things go first, work, family, everything else. But when I can, if I'm training for a big race, I really stack my weekend runs. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I'll do early, wake up at 4 a.m. and maybe if I'm doing a 4-hour run, I'm done by 8. Yeah. Or I learned this, the hard way in Lean Horse when I didn't test my headlamp and my lights went out at 2 a.m. and it was pitch black.
Did you have extra batteries?
I did not. That's where I learned how wonderful aid station workers are. I ran up to an aid station and I said, does anyone have a spare headlamp? And that nice lady took her headlamp off her head and said, here you go. Knowing full well she's never going to get back. But before, I knew before Steamboat that I needed to do some night runs. So, if I wasn't running early, I might run late, maybe after dinner, after we put Lark down. Back then she was going to bed at 7:30, 8, and I'd go out from like 8 until midnight and pitch black. Maybe we're up in the mountains or something.
But now she's staying up later.
Now she's staying up a little bit later.
They do that.
Yes, they do. It's challenging, but consistent with some of your other guests who seem all way more accomplished than me. So I'm very flattered you had me on. Running kind of centers me, helps me focus. I think I do some of my best thinking when I'm running. I'm sure you do as well. Some of the best, deep thought in furtherance of some of my cases, or maybe just how to be a better person. Mm-hmm. I always usually run with my phone so I can add some thoughts into my notes or email myself. I think taking that break, unplugging a little bit, but also always having the back of your mind about what you're working on, all those things together, I think have made me better litigator, better advocate, definitely a better person. So I found the joy in running. I found that, for me, it's really a requirement. I need to have some time to unplug a little bit. And, we have such a busy world, always connected. So getting out in the Summit County where I like to run, where I'm outside of cell phone service. Yeah. It's a true blessing to be able to do that.
Do you see yourself doing this in 20 years? I do. It's about longevity. So
I hope so. People always say, don't your knees hurt? And I often say, everything but my knees will hurt after a long run.
That's good.
I understand that I'm lucky with my knees so far. I haven't had any issues, but I would like to do it for a while. I mentioned, we talked about Lean Horse and North Fork in 2019. One of the most inspirational stories was the race director there, Janice O'Grady. I think she was a race director for many, many years. Yes. And I believe in 2019 was her last one. It was the end of her tenure. Yeah. And I saw her at the start of the Lean Horse 100.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she actually came up to me and said, hey, I recognize you. I recognize your name on the start list. I wanted to say hi because I know that you ran your first ultra in my race. It was just a fantastic, so cool. Kind of uplifting story right before the race. And then she finished, I think she finished first in her age group of 70 plus females. So it's just kind of eye opening at the time when I had never run 100 miles thinking, can I do this? I think I was 35 at the time. And, people are doing it into their 70s, which is just fantastic.
Oh, it's unbelievable. So, you just had an 80-year-old run the mile in, did you see that?
I did see that.
6:38, I think it was. I'm like, oh my gosh, at age 80. So yeah. So who knows what the future holds. So, but you don't have to worry about that for a very long time. Some of us, it's staring at us much more rapidly. But Cory, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.